You should have seen their faces. Mouths hanging open. Force halfway to mouths. Conversations frozen mid-sentence. I pulled up to the house in a cherry-red Ferrari 488 Spider. Top down, engine humming like a symphony of revenge and redemption. My cousins stared like they'd seen a ghost. My uncle dropped his beer. My mother? She didn't say a word. Not at first. Because the last time they saw me, I was the failure. The college dropout. The one who wasted his potential. The kid who couldn't hold down a job. Who wouldn't just do the sensible thing. But now I was the guy behind the wheel. And they had no idea what I'd been building behind the scenes. Let me rewind. Because to understand the power of that moment, you need to understand where it all started. Growing up in my family meant one thing. Follow the path. Graduate high school. Go to college. Get a steady job with benefits. Retire after 40 years. Rinse and repeat. There wasn't much room for dreaming. Dreaming was for artists. For actors. For kids with rich parents who could afford to figure it out. Not for us. We were blue-collar. Practical. We worked with our hands. We didn't ask for much. We just wanted security. And I respected that. I really did. But from the time I was a kid, I felt something different stirring inside me. I'd set up lemonade stands on the corner and try out different flavors to boost sales. I sold homemade bookmarks in middle school with inspirational quotes on them. I'd spend hours online learning how to build websites while my friends were playing video games. Entrepreneurship wasn't something I learned. It was something I was. But that drive didn't mean much at family gatherings. At every birthday, wedding, or holiday dinner, there'd always be a round of life updates. My cousin Jacob got promoted. My sister was finishing her nursing degree. My uncle had hit 25 years at the factory. Then there was me, usually unemployed, occasionally working part-time, always working on something. The look said it all. The polite nods, the forced smiles, the awkward silence after I spoke, and the questions. Oh, so what do you do exactly? Still trying that internet thing? You could always go back to school. It wasn't always cruel. Sometimes it came from a place of care, concern. But over time, it wore me down. I started avoiding them. Started keeping my wins to myself. Not that I had many at first. My first few business ideas were disasters. I launched an ebook store that never made a sale. Tried to sell handmade wallets on Etsy, except I had no idea how to sew. But failure didn't scare me. What scared me was staying stuck. So I kept going, kept testing, kept learning. And when things finally started to click, when I figured out what product niches worked, how to target ads properly, how to scale, something shifted in me. Not just in business, in mindset. I realized I didn't need to prove myself to anyone yet, but someday I would. And I promised myself, when I did, it wouldn't be with a speech. It would be with a statement, a Ferrari-sized one. So that moment I pulled into the driveway in a $300,000 machine of Italian engineering, every head turning, every judgment erased in a single second. It wasn't just a flex. It was closure. It was everything I'd worked for wrapped in red paint and horsepower. And the truth is, that car wasn't even the most expensive thing I owned, but it was the loudest. And sometimes, silence doesn't end with words. It ends with an engine. My family wasn't cruel. Not intentionally. They just didn't understand. We came from a long line of hard workers, mechanics, nurses, factory floor managers, school bus drivers. Respectable jobs. Honest work. Nobody was rich, but nobody expected to be. My dad, a union electrician, used to come home every night with grease on his hands and a weariness in his bones. But he always provided. To him, that was success. Simple, noble, secure. So when his only son, me, said I wanted to do my own thing online, it felt like an insult to everything he'd built. Real men get up early and punch in, he'd say. You want to sit in front of screen all day? That's not work. That's laziness with Wi-Fi. My mom, always the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over. He's just finding his path, she'd say. Maybe things are different now. But even she couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. At family dinners, I could feel the weight of their judgment before I even sat down. The way conversations shifted when I entered the room. The subtle way they'd over-congratulate my cousin's promotions while pretending not to notice when I said I was still figuring things out. It stung, especially because I wasn't lazy. I wasn't lost. I was working hard, harder than I ever had in school or at any job. I was waking up early, staying up late, learning skills no one had ever taught me. Marketing, analytics, web development, customer service, logistics. I wasn't just building a business, I was building myself. But to them, it was invisible. Invisible progress, invisible hours, invisible dreams. They couldn't see the gears turning, the seeds being planted. All they saw was the absence of results, and they equated that with failure. Eventually, I stopped trying to explain myself. I gave up trying to make them believe in something they couldn't understand. Instead, I let them talk. I let them assume. I let them be wrong. And I focused on getting it right. Looking back, it was probably the best thing I could have done. Because the distance gave me space. Space to grow. Space to mess up. Space to recalibrate. I watched as my friends got stable jobs, bought starter homes, built predictable lives. And while part of me envied their security, another part of me knew I was chasing something different. I wasn't interested in comfort. I wanted freedom. I didn't want a boss. I didn't want limits. I didn't want to wake up dreading Mondays or counting down to retirement. I wanted to create something of my own. And while my family couldn't understand that yet, one day they would. One day they'd see it all. And I would make sure it was unforgettable. So I disappeared, figuratively, not physically. While they were living their real lives, climbing ladders, and paying mortgages, I retreated into a different kind of grind. One most people never see. The behind-the-scenes hustle. The 3 a.m. work sessions. The quiet battles you fight with doubt, fear, and that nagging voice in your head that says maybe, just maybe, they were right about you. I lived on peanut butter toast and cheap coffee. Rented a tiny studio where the shower door didn't close properly. I had no AC, one skillet, and exactly 2 plates. But I also had drive. A fire that burned through every rejection and failure. I taught myself everything from scratch. SEO, sales funnels, product sourcing, customer service scripts. I took free courses, watched hours of YouTube tutorials, followed marketers online like they were prophets. And every day, I failed a little less. I made a $100 sale, then $200, then $5. The first time I made $1,000 in a single week, I stared at my screen for what felt like hours. It felt like proof, like the start of something real. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I wasn't done. I wasn't ready to share a success that still felt fragile. So I scaled quietly, reinvented the store, rebranded, automated, hired my first virtual assistant, then another. Soon, I was clearing more in a month than some of my relatives did in half a year. But when I showed up at the next family dinner, I still wore the same shoes, still drove the same beat-up sedan, still gave the same vague answer when someone asked, "So, what are you doing now?" I said, "Still working on that online thing." They nodded, laughed politely, and kept talking about my cousin's new apartment. That night, I went home and made another $4,000 in revenue. I didn't even celebrate, because I had a bigger vision. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about freedom, independence, and one day vindication. The vindication that would come when I didn't have to say a word. Just drive up and let them hear the engine. But before I could do that, there were more battles to win. I hit burnout more than once. There were weeks when the orders were overwhelming, when customer service complaints piled up, when my supplier delayed shipments. One time, a whole batch of products showed up defective, and I had to refund hundreds of customers. I was crushed. financially and emotionally. But I didn't stop. I studied my mistakes, redesigned systems, switched suppliers, rebuilt trust with my customers one message at a time. And when the business stabilized again, I scaled further. I launched a second brand, then a third, one in skincare, one in fitness, one in eco-friendly kitchen tools. Each one had its own story, its own audience, its own challenges. And each time, I leveled up. My biggest win came the day one of my brands got featured in a national lifestyle magazine. It wasn't a paid placement. It was organic. Someone on their editorial team had tried one of our products, loved it, and included it in their top 10 sustainable home products. Orders exploded. My site crashed from the traffic. I had to overnight inventory from 3 different warehouses just to keep up. That month, I made more money than my dad made in a year. And still, I told no one, because I knew how fragile respect could be in my family. They'd spent so long doubting me. I didn't want to come back just to prove something. I wanted to come back when it meant something. When the proof couldn't be questioned, dismissed, or reduced to just luck. So I waited, while the bank accounts grew, while the testimonials poured in, while I became the entrepreneur I'd always dreamed of being. I waited until the Ferrari, because that car, that was never the goal. It was the punctuation mark, the moment that said, loud and clear, I made it, and you never even saw it coming. The more my business grew, the more I felt myself drifting from the world I once called home. I didn't fit anymore. Not in the way they wanted. Not in the way they understood. When I talked about A/B testing product pages or conversion funnels, my friends looked at me like I was speaking another language. When I mentioned fulfillment centers or digital customer avatars, even my sister said, "You lost me at sales copy." It wasn't just that I was doing something different. I was becoming someone different. And that scared people. They say success changes you. But what they don't talk about is how it reveals everyone else too. The truth is, when you grow beyond people's expectations of you, they don't always cheer. Sometimes they resent you for outgrowing the box they built for you. So I started turning down invitations. The family BBQs, the birthday parties, the holiday dinners. It wasn't because I didn't love them. It was because I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I wasn't anymore. Every gathering felt like walking into a room wearing a mask, smiling politely, nodding through advice I didn't ask for, downplaying what I'd built because I didn't want to deal with the discomfort it caused. So I stayed away. For 2 years. In that time, my life transformed in ways I never could have predicted. I moved into a loft apartment downtown, hired full-time staff, started speaking at small business conferences, invested in other startups. I even launched a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities, something I wish I'd had when I was starting. But with each new milestone, there was a shadow behind the light, a sense of loneliness. Because while I had earned success, I had lost connection. I missed my mom's laugh, my uncle's terrible dad jokes, the way my cousins would argue about fantasy football like it was a matter of national security. I missed belonging, but I also knew I couldn't go back as the version of myself they remembered, because that version no longer existed. And the new version? He wasn't asking for permission anymore. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "Grandpa's turning 80. We're throwing a big cookout this weekend. Everyone's going to be there. You should come." I hesitated. I could hear the hope in her voice, the quiet plea behind the invitation, the chance to bring me back into the fold. I told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up and sat in silence. I thought about everything. The judgments, the silence, the pride, the distance, the need for them to see not just what I had done, but who I had become. Not out of ego, not out of spite, but out of a desire to be understood, to be seen. And that's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not to show up, but arrive. I didn't want to blend in anymore. I wanted them to feel the shift, to witness it, to hear it rumble down the block. And that's when the idea hit me. The Ferrari. It was never about the car. Not really. It was about reclaiming the narrative. It was about walking into a space that once minimized me and saying, without a single word, I'm not who I used to be. So I booked a rental. Not black, not silver, red. Because red says you've arrived. Not quietly, but completely. And that weekend, everything changed. The day arrived. It was warm, clear skies, the kind of golden afternoon that feels like a second chance. I arrived at the rental agency around 10 a.m. The Ferrari 488 Spider was already parked out front, gleaming, radiant, humming with the energy I'd spent years building in silence. The red was brighter than I expected, bolder, louder, exactly what I needed. As I eased behind the wheel, the engine came alive with a growl that felt personal. Not just horsepower, power. This wasn't a status symbol. This was a punctuation mark. And I was ready to end the sentence I started so many years ago. I drove the long way to my mom's house, winding through back roads and quiet neighborhoods. I needed that time to breathe, to collect myself. Part of me was still nervous, not about how they'd react, but about what it would stir in me. Would I feel smug, vindicated, or would it hurt all over again? When I turned onto their street, I slowed. The driveway was full. The yard was alive with voices, folding chairs, smoke from the grill, laughter, music, a familiar soundtrack to a life I used to be part of. And then, like a thunderclap, the Ferrari announced my arrival. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. My cousin froze mid-bite. My aunt gasped. My uncle stood up so fast he knocked over a soda can. I parked right in front. Top down. Shades on. I stepped out. Silence. You could have heard the wind rustling through the trees. Then someone said, barely above a whisper, "No way." I smiled. Not smug. Just steady. Then I walked into the yard. All eyes on me. "Is that your car?" someone asked. I nodded. No explanation. No big speech. Just truth. My mom came through the crowd. She looked stunned. Confused. Emotional. She reached out, touched my face like she needed to make sure I was real. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," I replied. Then she did something I didn't expect. She hugged me. Tight. "I missed you," she whispered. And just like that, the tension broke. Everyone started moving again, asking questions, crowding around the car. The cousins who used to tease me now wanted selfies. The uncles who gave career advice now asked what I actually did. But the best part? I didn't need their approval anymore. I already had mine. Later, over paper plates and grilled corn, I sat with my sister. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "You really did it?" I nodded. I did. And for the first time, I felt it settle in. Not just success, peace. Because the car was temporary. But the respect, the self-belief, that was forever. And in that backyard, with the scent of barbecue and the murmur of my family around me, I realized something. I wasn't the black sheep anymore. I was the bold one. And I'd finally come home. That night, as the sun sank behind the trees and the laughter softened into hums and low conversation, something unexpected happened. My uncle, gruff, old school, always the loudest in the room, walked up to me with 2 beers, handed me one, didn't say anything at first. Then he looked at the car, then at me, and said, "Guess you weren't just playing around with that computer stuff after all." It wasn't an apology, but it was something, and sometimes something is enough. He clinked bottles with me and walked away. That night, sitting on the porch with my mom, I told her everything. The early failures, the ramen-fueled nights, the breakdowns, the breakthroughs, the loneliness, the pride. She listened without interruption. No judgment, just quiet awe. "You really built all of that on your own?" I nodded. "Every piece." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I didn't understand it back then, but I do now. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. Later, my sister joined us. She peppered me with questions. How did it work? What did I actually sell? Could she start something too? We laughed, talked business, talked dreams. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding anything. I was seen and accepted, even admired. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the Ferrari. It was about being able to share the truth of who I'd become and be embraced for it. There was no more pretending, no more performing, just connection, authentic, earned. I looked around the yard. My cousins were sitting around the fire pit, telling stories. Someone put on music. Maya was dancing with her toddler granddaughter. And I thought, maybe this was the real reward all along. Not the wealth, not the clout, but this, coming full circle, with nothing left to prove, and everything left to give. It's easy to think success is about the money, the car, the applause. But the truth is, success isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the peace of knowing you stayed the course when no one believed in you. It's the moment you stop needing permission to be proud of who you are. That Ferrari? It turned heads. It made a statement. But the real victory was sitting across from my mother and seeing pride in her eyes. Not because of the car, but because of the man who stepped out of it. The one who didn't quit. The one who turned doubt into discipline. Silence into strategy. Distance into drive. And I realized something else that night. Something I carry with me every day now. Sometimes the best way to prove yourself is to stop trying to prove anything at all. Let your results speak. Let your life speak. And when you finally return to the people who didn't see your vision, let your presence say it all. Because true success isn't about showing off. It's about showing up fully, authentically, unapologetically, and knowing that no matter who doubted you, you didn't just make it, you made it count. Thanks for listening. And if you're out there building something in silence, wondering if anyone will ever understand, keep going. One day, your Ferrari moment will come, and it'll be worth every second of the wait.